So the next topic in this third now episode of the new Collaborwocky is victory conditions and homeschooling. So Dushantan, what do you think?
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for this topic. So, how this came about, I was watching the new successful distributed teams course that you and Mark have been putting together, and one of the lessons was on victory conditions for building out the right environment exercise. And then yesterday, my wife and I, after the kids had gone to bed, she was telling me about her day with the kids. So, just as a context, we have twins. They're 5 years old, and right now, like, what are the lessons are phonics and writing. And the interesting part is, just again for a little bit of context, is my son loves phonics, but my daughter doesn't. But my daughter loves writing, and my son takes forever. So I don't know if it's a boy girl thing. Anyway, but what happened out of this was that my wife was giving herself a hard time. I'd like to say she was like, "Oh my goodness, what do I need to do? Do I need to send them back to school or whatnot? Because my son is not up to par on certain things or whatever." And because of this video that I had watched that Jim and Mark did, I was thinking about the victory conditions. And, because I'll just look over at my notes. But one of the things that Jim said was, a victory condition is anytime somebody says, I want, or it would be nice if, or what would happen if. And so, with that in mind, I was thinking, because my wife was entirely complaining about this, well, why is my son not doing this or whatever? And we were talking about the victory conditions, and I was saying to her, is there a way that you could reframe this so that potentially the expectations are different? What would the victory conditions be for the satisfaction of making the criteria for teaching our son or our daughter? And so it was late at night. It was pretty deep conversation. And what we got from that was, you know, we need to make it explicit, especially during the lesson and how it's showing up. Like my son, he doesn't respond to count up timers. He really likes count down timers. My daughter doesn't like the concept of time. She just wants to free flow. And it's very nice. And because we actually visualized and verbalized the conditions for satisfaction of said activities. So, writing before breakfast, then finish up writing if they need to, grab their device for a little fun time within the framework of a schedule. And today was the first day of this experiment after last night's conversation. And I think it went well because the flexibility was there. So, where was I going with this is as I'm learning with the course, I consider myself and our family to be a team because we're in each other's faces all the time. And so, as a team, we need to support each other to know how best we work. Where can we score the victories? Because I'm new to this mom and dad thing, and it's like my parents were winging it. I'm pretty sure their parents were winging it. I'm winging it. So we gotta get the victories in when we can. That's what I see. Thank you.
So what I like about that is well, a bunch of things, but that any victory condition requires some sort of understood future state that you want to attain. And you can't just say, like, we want to be agile or I want to have learned phonics. When I was writing a screenplay, I read a book on screenplay writing, which had a statement at the beginning of it that will never leave my head, which is before you write a screenplay, ask yourself, do you want to write a screenplay or do you want to have written a screenplay? And so lots of times we wish that we had a thing, and then we just kind of wait for it to happen to us. And so when you and your wife and your kids got sat together and said, okay, how can we complete this stuff? Then you created a structure to obtain the victory conditions. And maybe that structure will require some manipulation or change or improvement as you go along. It probably will, because the structure will become old and boring to little kids pretty quickly. But at least for the time being, do they know what actions are appropriate at the appropriate time, and then how they can get success out of that? And I love that.
I would like to add something to it too. So, as somebody, my daughter was homeschooled all the way till college, and it was my wife's idea. She did like led all of it because I wouldn't have the patience to be able to do it. But not only does she love learning and engage with it in a way much deeper than anybody I've ever seen go through a regular school system, like she's like really into it just for the joy of doing it. The bond between my wife and my daughter is just phenomenal. I mean, it's just an amazing thing to watch because they spent every day together. And it's not like it was just the two of them because they were part of a co-op and there were other people that would teach topics too, and they would go do activities and stuff all the time. But just that relationship, the strength of the connection and the communication is just probably, I think, the greatest reward that comes out of it.
Yeah, I wanted to build off that too. But first, thanks for the plug on the course, the Shelton. I appreciate that. But the other part, which kind of caught me, and I put it in our notes here. You said we must be a team because we're in each other's face all the time. I think there's more to it than that. You know, in that course, we talk about rapport, and Dave just gave a great example of that. And you know, it's the rapport of your wife with your children, you with your children, you with your wife, working together to kind of grow. And I'm not trying to equate this as, oh, we should be a family at work. No, please don't do that. That's creepy, first of all, and second, it can lead to problems
with HR.
But yeah, exactly. But I think rapport is important, and there was not too long ago there was this other person I know that was writing about to be professional, you have to work with people you don't like. It's like. And so I said, yeah, let's not forget about rapport on this one. Okay. You don't have to just constantly be stuck with people you don't like.
Well, and at some point, it's good to learn how to gain rapport with people that initially it seems like you might not. So yeah. We're really good at, human beings in general are really good at dismissing other people and building up false barriers to collaboration and rapport that is it's not to go against what Tony Ann said, but it's counterproductive. Maybe we don't like talking about productivity, but counterproductivity we can talk about.
But I also think that there could also be a status threat when you bring on new people. You know, you lose your stature in the group. Jim and I worked pretty much alone for a good dozen years. And then all of a sudden we find that we have 6 other people that we're working with. You know, and that started with, interestingly enough, I don't know, Jim, do you remember when we started working with your friend John? And you were concerned. So Jim's best friend since childhood, John Von Segern, started to work with us for a while when we first started Modus Institute. And I kind of sensed Jim wanted to give us some alone time to see how John and I would mesh. And then one day I noticed him smiling. And I said, what are you smiling about? He's like, I've been watching your conversation in Slack with John. It just makes me happy.
That's not what happened.
Well, what happened?
I think Brooklyn. My presentation in Brooklyn. So we had a lean startup conference that we did in Brooklyn, and I did a presentation. And in the presentation, I was talking about rapport. That's so right. Tony Ann's off in the audience, And just before I went on stage, she was having this conversation with John on Slack that was just hilarious. It was really funny. So being me,
Being you,
I
being this
just cut and
presumptuous man.
pasted the whole conversation and
Yes.
slapped it on a slide. And I was like, this is rapport. This is
And
like
I look up and
it was
I
such a
see my
gift.
current Slack conversation with John,
Yes.
you know,
There was nothing embarrassing in
in front
it.
of this
but-
audience. That's right.
But they could literally see like it just happened. The timestamps were all very but it is a gift at any time when we as people are able to get over our own bad selves and just find things to create together. And that when we see it that way, that we're building some new interesting thing or making something better because we're working together, collaboration becomes the simplest. People just do it naturally.
Yeah.
And so the biggest problem that I've ever had getting anybody to collaborate, and actually before we stop this, Tony, do you want to close this with your story from West Virginia?
I don't remember.
A homeschooling story from West Virginia?
Sure, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But I do want to extend something that you said. I think one of the reasons we've been extremely fortunate to relatively seamlessly with you gentlemen joining us is that we had a system in place. So we had a system in place that gave you all and gave Jim and I the transparency into what needed to be done, who was doing it, who was overburdened. It was never a case of, I never had to reach out and say, did so-and-so do this? And if not, why? I understood if somebody's tickets weren't moving, I could see their ecosystem and I could see that they were overloaded and that's why. And then I could jump in and help. There's been a million times that I've, been overwhelmed and you could see it from Slack and Thushanthan will just jump in and say, hey, can I do this? Or Tony, if you do this, I've done this before. If you do this, it's going to save you time. So the story, Jim, you're speaking about the pizza place.
Yes, pizza man.
Okay, so well, there goes the opening to Kids Bond.
If you want to,
no,
okay.
it's totally fine. It's actually my favorite story, and Thushanthan, it somewhat relates to what you were talking about. When you would ask your wife how your day was. Jim and I were working with this team early on when we were still, I don't know if the personal Kanban book had come out or if we were just about to release it, but we were doing some consulting with Kanban at that point. And we were working with this organization in West Virginia, and every couple of months we'd go back. And so we developed a pretty strong, comfortable rapport with these people. And we went to lunch one day. One of the managers pulled me aside and said, hey, can I talk to you about something? And I'm like, what did Jim do now? And he said, excuse me, he said, my wife homeschools and she's pregnant with like our fourth. And it's not easy. It's not easy me being at work. It's not easy her, managing the household and the kids' education. And, she had this range of ages that she was teaching. And he said, so I set up a rudimentary Kanban online. This is before there was the Kanban industrial complex where, everybody had a Kanban tool out. So he set up this rudimentary Kanban and he set it up so that he saw, every single day what each of his kids were working on, how far they were progressing, who was being held up, who was going further. He said, and at any point in the day, I could take a look at this without calling my wife. And he leans into me and he said, it helps me be a better husband. I don't know
That's
that
awesome.
I've heard a better story as it relates to Kanban, Kids Bond, visualizing work, humanizing work. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want to do? We want to be better people. We don't want to come home crunchy from our work, or we don't want to leave our desk and then go into the other room and be present with our family and just be crunchy from work. And likewise, we don't want to come into work being crunchy from our families. And I think that the more we visualize our capacity, understand our capacity, are able to share, knowledge of our capacity, able to manage that capacity, the more that before we use the term in one of the other conversations, the more we're self-aware, we build systems for self-awareness, the more we could really take care of ourselves and each other. And, call me crazy, but after 15 years of doing this with Jim, that remains my goal is, if we humanize work, then maybe we can create a virtuous cycle where people feel they're treated better at work and they'll go home feeling better about their accomplishments during the day. And maybe we can't separate work life from home life as easily as we once could, but maybe we can create a healthier integration if we do that.
Can I ask a question about this?
Please.
So one of the things I've noticed with the folks at Modus, and I think it started for me with Thashantan and Mark when we were going through Labum, if one of us just disappeared, I never wondered, what the hell are they doing? And I've noticed that I have the same reaction with everybody at Modus. If I'm absent, I just trust that everybody knows I'll come back as soon as I can.
Yeah.
And if anybody else isn't there, I don't stress about it. It's just, I'm sure they have other stuff. But there's this kind of trust in the system that I know everybody who's here, really cares about what we're doing. And we're all committed to it. And we'll all get back to it as fast as we can. So that's not a trust that I've experienced in a lot of other workplaces.
I appreciate that you use the word trust and not accountability.
Oh, that's different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think in a lot of organizations and in a lot of cultures, it's you don't feel a sense of you have to be accountable to us.
Right.
Which I think has a
well, maybe I do, but I also trust that if I'm not showing up, I trust that you trust me, I guess.
Oh gosh, yeah. 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 Well, also because, we've been vulnerable enough with each other to know, who's dealing with things with their children, who's dealing with health issues, whose daughter is graduating, whose child just got their driver's license and just totaled the car. I mean, I agree with Mark that we don't use we're a family.
Right.
Because your family's not going to put you on a performance plan. Your family's not going to fire you and take away your health care. This is different. And it's okay that it's different. It's okay that we don't use the language of family. But I appreciate that we use the language of trust and care and concern and not accountability, but responsibility. And with this group, I feel it's not, Dave, that you have a responsibility to check in with us. I feel when you're not present, we have a responsibility to check in and make sure you're okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. That's nice.
Yeah. Well, and so that's one of the primary things that anyone should do when setting up their own professional culture or a culture that wants to get something done, like homeschooling. So just like you say, we're not a family, but in certain cases, while you're homeschooling, the role definition of the people in the house changes subtly or not so subtly. And, people need to respect that there are different roles and that those different roles have different responsibilities of the people who are acting in them. Thashantan, did you watch the episode in the Successful Distributed Teams class that Mark and I did about responsibility and accountability? Have you seen that one yet?
Yes. Yeah, I did that. Very nice.
Very. Well, thank you.
Very nice.
It's just very nice.
He's Canadian. He has to say that. These people don't know you yet, Thashantan.
Yes, that's right. But they will. Boy, they will. All right. So now we've got the Mark Kilby and the fake Mark Kilby. Uh, all right. So that's the end of that one. I declare.